We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
This is your favorite time of the week with your number one podcast.
Hear my true story.
Yeah, our dear listeners, thank you so much for always following Hear My True Story podcast. It is me, your host, Otako, today, and I would like to just share with you my wonderful personal story. And it's quite a wonderful day, and outside there's good, wonderful sun, and I would like to say it is hot, and it's one of the hottest days here in Germany, and also the hot wave is coming to Europe, and we are really a bit, experiencing this hotness that is coming. It's just because of global warming and climate change. But we people, we need to fight this. We need to change this. We need to really work towards climate change. Anyway, today I'm here not to share about climate change or what. I'm here to share about my personal experience, my own stories, my personal stories. It is now 1 year that I've been training as a pre-educator here in Germany. And as you know, it's quite always nice that when someone completes a year in a training to be excited. I'm supposed to train for 3 years, but now I've done 1 year. And I would like to share with you my experience. And I would just say, if you're listening or you're watching, please subscribe to this podcast, subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be always able to follow us everywhere you get your information from.
Welcome to a brand new episode. Hear my true story.
This is my personal story. When I moved to Germany in 2019, I had to think about changing my career from being a full-time artist to something that is not so far from my experience. I'm an artist. I did theater for over 14 years, and I've been doing this with people and young people. So I really look to finding something that is not so far away from my previous career as an artist. Now, when Corona came in, I realized as an artist I could not survive here in Germany. So it was high time that I had to choose a new career. And remember, being a migrant or being an international in Germany, that meant that I couldn't just continue with doing theater or continue doing storytelling because there were challenges that I could really see myself. I had to learn the language, I had to perfect the language, I had to get the network. So all this could not really give me a room to continue being an artist. But that didn't fail me. I had to choose. Then I had to find places that I could get career guidance, kind of call it career advice on what I can choose to do. The good thing about this country, Germany, there are so many places that you can get these advisors. So I went to one of the Beratungsstelle, like one of the places where you can get career advice. and I was given options of what I can do. And then I weighed these options and I saw that I can do what is called a Erzieher. And then I decided to become a pre-educator. That is in English, but in German, it's called Erzieher. So, having decided that, then I had to look at how do I get this training to be a pre-educator in German. Then I was required to do a practicum for 3 months. I had to choose a practicum in an institution that works with young people in the field of being a pre-educator or in the field of being a hairseer. So I looked for a place in the town where I stay. I live in a small town which is called Marburg. It is found in central Germany. And it's a university town. So meaning I would really find a place very quick. So having taken 2-3 weeks online searching for a place, I was able to get a wonderful place in a kindergarten, in a kita, where I was supposed to work with young people from the age of 3 to 6 years. And then I did this practicum for 3 months. 3 months without pay. That meant I had to work. So anyway, because I love what I do, I worked 3 months without pay and I wanted to become a pre-educator. So I had to choose that. So after 3 months of practicum, then I embarked on looking for a school. So when I looked for a school, it was not quite easy, but I'm a lucky guy. I'm telling you, Otako is a lucky person. As I was looking for a school, the place where I did my practicum informed me, yeah, please, you are done with your practicum, but we have a position you can support us. There's a way that you, in German here, someone can support an institution in the career that they want to do. When someone, for example, is sick, I could go in and support. When someone is not able to work, I could go in and support the team in my profession that I wanted to be, of being a pre-educator. So all that time as I was looking for school, I was still also working and I was being paid somehow. So that was a lucky part of me that I got. I got some job as I was looking to a school, or as I was looking for a school to train as a pre-educator. And because I was really training, because I was really working at the same time looking for a school, I got support from the place where I was working from. They supported me. My family also supported me, my wife, and also personally, I supported myself, and we found a school. Finding a school in German is not easy. However much there are so many schools, but finding a particular school for your particular training that you want to do, it's not easy. They need a lot of documents, and I had to work in a lot of documents. I had to get a recommendation from where I did my practicum. I had to get my Anerkennung from, that is changing my academic papers from Uganda to German, so that it's really weighed and you know that, okay, at this level you can do this training. And then also I had to get papers that show that my language is good. And by that time I'd done up to B2. And I was lucky. The school said, okay, no problem. Join the school as you also perfect your language. But that will be the next thing. I'll talk about the language later. So, being lucky as I am, I got the school. I was so happy. I want to share this, but I could not. I was happy, excited, but at the same time, I was worried. How would I complete the school training? Because to train to become a pre-educator, you need 3 years of training in the school. 3 years studying. But I was worried, how can I handle this? But the other good thing about it is that the training that I was doing, I was to start in 1 year. That was in 2021, August. It was where I could go to school for 2 weeks. And then I also go to work for 2 weeks. That meant that I could study 2 weeks and also work 2 weeks. So I could have both school and practice. So after getting the school, I had to look for a practice place. Where should I do my practice as a trainee of being a pre-educator? Because I'm lucky, the place where I was supporting the place that I was working in, the kindergarten, told me, no problem, we have a space for you. If you want to be a trainee in our institution, we have a position. I applied. And guess what? I got it. So I got the practice place and also I got the school. So in 2021, August, I started my full-time practice as a trainee in school and at work. And I can tell you, I've finished 1 year training as a pre-educator. And this really makes me so excited. And that's why I want to share with you how it has been for me.
Make sure to leave a review. This makes our day and fuels future episodes. Hear my true story.
For the fact, for anyone listening to this podcast, if you just moved to Yemen or you are trying to look for changing your career, there are things as you consider as a migrant or an international in a country where you don't know the language, you don't know the cultures. But for my training, I really needed to focus on certain things, and that was language. I had to think of the language. How do I learn this language without being stressed, without being depressed? The truth to tell you, language can make you stressed. Language can make you depressed. But I'm lucky. The place where I was working was supportive. I mean, I could practice speaking the language with the fellow workers. I mean, I could speak the German language with children. I could learn a lot from the children. I could learn a lot from my colleagues at work in terms of the language. Then at school, I also had the advantage that I could really speak the language, read the books in the language that is German, and also I could practice speaking with fellow students in the language without being looked at as someone who doesn't know the language very well. And this is where I had to focus on. I took a training, a class in German, and then I finished up to C1. And also I didn't take language being a disadvantage to me as a migrant or as a foreigner or as an international whose German is not a mother tongue language, or it is not your first language. You have to look at it as an advantage, but don't look at it as a disadvantage, because the moment you look at it as a disadvantage, you become depressed, you become stressed. You'll not learn it because you have that negative energy on it. But I had the positive energy. I could really say, yeah, of course, Otako, you cannot speak the language, but look, you speak other languages. Yeah, look, you have a lot that you can do. You can understand other people in the language that they don't understand. For example, English. I could understand when someone speaks English. That means that if there was someone at workplace who only speaks English, I could be the person that could understand that person. So I took that as an advantage. And guess what? It has really supported me to really improve my language. Because I didn't look at the German language being a negative issue that, okay, I can't speak it, I don't want it. But I said, no, I am speaking it not as a perfect person who was born and raised in Yemen, but I look at it as an advantage. Now I learn the language. I'm perfecting my language. I'm improving my language. And with that, my house building or my training goes on well. The other thing that I focused on is the experience I have. I did not look at my experience not being so supportive in my training as a pre-educator, because I'd worked with people, I'd worked with young people and children for over 10 years. For over 10 years, I was working with young people, children, and adults as a theater artist, because I was an artist in Uganda, but also as a teacher, because I trained as a teacher in Uganda to be a teacher for high school. So I was already working with students in schools. And for theater, I did not only work in Uganda. I had opportunities to do projects all over the world. I had a project in Hong Kong. I had a project in UK. I had a project in France. I had a project in Thailand. I had a project in Bangladesh. I had a project in Rwanda. I had a project that I did in Burkina Faso. I mean, I had so many experiences that I'd gathered as an artist. So that experience also made me feel comfortable in my training as a pre-educator. I looked at the previous experience and I realized no one can gather that. However much you are good at the language, the German language, but you have not really looked at your experience, reflected in your experience that you have collected in your lifetime. When I looked at this, I saw myself as a perfect trainee to become a pre-educator in German.
Enjoying this episode? Leave a review now.
Hear my true story.
Another thing that I really looked at is the love for what I want to do. I realized that I love my work. I love working with children. I love working with young people. I love working with people. That is one of the strengths that I carried with me in this 1 year. I could really wake up every morning, go to work with positive energy because I love doing things that I love to do with people, with children, with adults, with young adults. So when I went to my work, because I work in a kindergarten, with this positive energy, I had to really share what I have with the children, but also get to be open to learn a lot from the children. I like doing my storytelling. I like doing my theater. I like doing movements with children. I like playing. I liked listening to them. I liked reading books to them. I loved everything that I was doing because it was coming from my inner feelings. That's what I realized, the love for what you're doing. That love makes you finish your training without anything. Because at school, they look at your practice as part of the training. But also, because I love what I do when I go in school, and of course the language is not my strength, but I look at it as a positive thing. As I read these books in German and I don't understand something, I reflect and say, no, you get what? They are talking about this. You understand, you're good at doing it at work, so you can also do it in school, in class, in the theory part. That is the super good thing. And being a performer, presentations cannot leave me behind. I really did my presentations well and really super cool. And I enjoyed working with other people in class. Of course, there are those disadvantages that you can find because you're not really understanding well what the teacher is saying. And then you want to really understand. So you really have to sometimes translate it to the language that you understand to really understand what is happening. But also that was good for me. I could do that. I could translate where I could. And when I really didn't have time to translate, I could ask my colleagues, my classmates, what was the teacher talking about? And also I could ask the teacher. And that brings me to another thing that really kept on me moving in this 1 year of training as a pre-educator is to ask questions. I asked questions every time when we were in class, and really the teacher shared something I don't really understand because of the language issue. I asked, I don't get that. How can I really understand it? And explain to you in the language that is German, but in a way that you could understand it. And that way I could really follow in class. If you are training here in German for any professional in class, and you are a foreigner, you are an international, you don't speak the German language as your first language, you ask questions because people are willing to answer. The teachers are willing to answer these questions for you. I mean, I took it as an advantage to ask questions all the time. Even at workplace, I could ask my colleagues when they do something and ask them, okay, why have we done this? And they'll tell you, as a profession, this is what we expected, because I'm in school 2 weeks and I'm at work 2 weeks. That meant that I could learn a lot. I could make a lot of experience with my colleagues, with the children, with my bosses, to know what I can do as a profession. And to let you know this, questioning or asking questions is one of the way that really made me to be able to finish my first year of the training as a pre-educator here in Yemen. And this, I've gone through it. There's a time when we did a project with children in the kindergarten. And of course, I didn't know why certain things we were doing them that way. And then I asked my colleague, why do we have to do this? And they tell me, oh, Otako, we do this because this is how we do it. This is how it supports you as a professional. You are expected to do this, to do that, to do that. And another thing that you need to have as a person deciding to move your career here in German to becoming a pre-educator is to have the open-minded life. You need to be open-minded. As a person, this is my way. I'm open-minded to learning new things, and also I'm open-minded to learning new cultures. I'm open-minded to be asked questions that some people fear to be asked. This being openness has really played a big role. For example, at school, there are things that I need to be open to confront with. If it comes to how do I deal with the issue of race, how do I deal with the issue of microaggression, how do I deal with issues of misunderstandings in cultures, how do I, that's the openness. Having an open mind really played my part in completing this 1 year training, both in the practice, also in school. And I can just tell you, it has been now 1 year that I have finished my training as a pre-educator in German. I have 2 years to go, but I hope these 2 years will also be wonderful. And I'm really looking forward to these 2 years. Yeah. And for our dear listeners, for those who are listening on our podcast, you can definitely support this podcast by subscribing or by sharing with other people who are listeners to podcasts, and also telling a friend to tell a friend about our podcast. And I would like to say thank you for always following us on our podcast. Hear My True Story. It has been me, Otako, your host. And I really look forward to hearing any questions you have them. You can leave them in the comment. Those who are on YouTube, you can leave them in the comment. Yeah, for those who are listening, wherever you're listening your podcast from, please give us some feedback. Thank you for listening. And for now, I would like to say bye. See you next time. See you next time for those who are watching. And those who are listening, yes, till next time. It has been Otako, your host.
Make sure to follow us on Twitter. Hear My True Story. We not only have voices for a podcast, but also faces for YouTube. Don't miss your next episode. Hear My True Story.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.